We're gonna do back exposure today. I'm actually gonna use you. Okay, so we've been talking about basically taking people down and passing their guard. What we're gonna talk about today is about back exposure. So, assuming we clinch up, we get any kind of tie up, etc. Right, I'm always gonna work to try to gain inside positioning. Does that make sense? We've already covered this kind of concept, right? Inside positioning, right? Assuming even if I have just this much control, if I drag down, right, we're going to end up to the ground, right? We're still going to be a fight or whatever, don't really care. But assuming that I'm controlling inside positioning, we start driving to the ground, right? What I'm going to look for now is all about back exposure, right? I'm looking for this right here, right? If I can turn someone, more back exposure. If they can turn, less back exposure. Does that make sense? How do I instigate this? One, I can move his knees, right? You see how his knee gives me the lower quadrant of his back, right? I can move his upper body at his elbows / his shoulders, right? If I could scoop underneath his shoulder and I can shove it, see how I get that back exposure on his upper quadrant. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're going to be doing, assuming is when we get to the ground, I want you to cause back exposure and then fill it with a part of your body. I do not care what part of your body, if it is your hand, your chest, or your legs, right? I want you to cause back exposure and then I want you to fill it. How can I help you?
I was gonna come.
Oh, this
Absolutely.
is Frozen.
Go around to the other side.
Okay.
Alright, so you see how I'm keeping the space filled, right? Make sense? Yeah, the space is filled. If he tries to turn back into me, he has to leave the wedge first and then he can turn, right? He cannot turn while the wedge is there. Does that make sense? Alright, give that a try. Back to the same position, right? We're gonna start working from side control. Alright, so we're here, right? We want to get to the back, right? We've established that we can do it through a rotation of the hips and the shoulder, right? Now, another way is to use one point as a pivot. Does that make sense? Right? I forced his body to make this the pivot. So if I was just lifting him up with not being able to pivot that, right, it's like this, right? As soon as I force that to be the pivot, what am I getting? Back exposure. So I am lifting, right, and making it the pivot. Does that make sense? Right, and now I'm getting to the back. So we can get it, right, through rotation. You see how I'm causing his back to be open, right? And we can get it through a type of lifting and controlling how he turns, right? Because if I just lift him, I have to find some magical way of getting into this space, right? If I just lift him, that's ineffective, right? We can all agree? So, I'm not just gonna lift him, I'm gonna turn him while I lift, so we can share the same space. My goal is to get to his back. I have gotten to his back. Does that make sense? Now, this can be done in both directions. So if I turn this way, right, and I now go this way, his pivot point is still his shoulder, right? And I've lifted it up. And he can no longer fill that space. Does that make sense? Now I rotate to myself. These are going to be skill building things. Does that make sense? Like we're going to get somewhere, I promise. I know this seems probably rudimentary, right?
That's just my level.
So we've established here, right? Now I want you to establish here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, go play.
Oh, hey, brother.
So we started from here, right? We're looking for rotation. When I see this kind of hand, right? Anything that's in my inside position, I want to nullify it, right? So if I pivot him, right, does this have any effect on me now?
No.
No. Do I have an effect on him?
Yes.
Right? I have control, right? In this kind of aspect where I'm stepping over, right, even right here, right? I have gone into a dominant mount position, right? Assuming I've done nothing else. And if I keep going, right? Now we are in the back position, right? I do not prefer the traditional style of back, which is most likely for most of y'all this,
Seatbelt grip.
right? This is the traditional style of jujitsu. Feet in, right, like so. You develop whatever kind of back control you want, right? But from here, right, or vice versa, right? Let's say he has no hand, right? And I was trying to get into here and I can't, right? He's being very good about controlling inside space. Let's say I can't get inside space. What do I have right now? I now got inside space, right, from the rotation, right? The lower I am, right, when I pop this up, his own elbow is going to feed to where I can now shove on it. Does that make sense? So if I can't get inside position, I'm like, oh man, I can't get it. So I boom. What do I have? Inside positioning, right? Inside positioning is key in grappling. It has the most effect, right? If I'm here, I have the most effect. This is outside positioning. Although annoying, right? Can he move his head around? Can he move his head around? You see how that's drastically limited, right? The same concept applies here. Outside positioning. He moves his arm around. He moves his arm around. Inside positioning is key, right? So when we're looking to cause these things, we're looking for rotation, right? And a point where we can gain inside positioning. What have I done? What am I controlling? Inside positioning. I'm wrapped around his body. I now control another inside positioning. Another inside positioning. So this is all about stair-stepping your way into better positions, right? If I'm here, I'm not in the greatest position, right? If I give him inside positioning, right? Let's say he gets another inside positioning, right? I'm not in a great position, right? So I back out, I have outside, and now I have inside. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to now work those same rotations, but work them and maintain inside positioning on people. I don't care if you go to the back. I want back exposure, and I want you to work inside positioning. Does that make sense? And I want you to start to solidify these inside positionings. And once you realize that when you start to solidify these inside positioning, you're working into submissions. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
Perfect. Go. Play. So all of y'all somewhat got to the realization that this kind of checks all the boxes, doesn't it?
Different.
You see what I'm doing? Right? Why does this work so well for back exposure? I'm controlling inside position, I'm causing rotation, and I'm pulling, right? It's literally doing all the same things, except I have one appendage that can literally complete all of it, right? That means other things are free to do other stuff. Does that make sense? So, the reason why it's so dominant is once you get a hand across a body, it becomes very weak, right? Until if he wants to get this strong, his main goal is to get it back to his side, right? And then it is strong, right? Once it is here, I can essentially try to extend your hand, sir. Would we agree that this is kind of a weak spot for my hand, right? Can you lift your hand, sir? It's hard, right? And I'm kind of just like,
Yeah, I'm not.
right? So like, think if I'm putting any kind of real pressure, right? Or my body is in line, right? So one of the main goals you should be looking for, right, is crossing people's appendages and forcing them to be pinned, right? Because these type of things will give you these kind of cross-body domination points, right? And increasing your pivot points. Why do things like this work? What is this pivot point?
Hip.
It's his hip, right? I'm driving it down, right? I'm controlling how many inside positions right now with one appendage, right? And I can improve this, right, by moving something like this. Now the pivot point is the shoulder, right? And we see how I can easily rotate him. Right? I can pivot him onto multiple points, right? We can even rotate to this way. You should never do this because it's how you're going to get your arm broken. But, assuming, right? But you see how easy I can rotate him. Woo. See how easy I can rotate him. Does that make sense? Right? So anytime we can get cross body, this should be powerful. Right? Whether you connect like this, right? Like this, or like this. These kind of cross bodies, right, is what you're really trying to look, because you're trying to do access control across the body. Does that make sense? Okay? So, I want you to use this gift wrap, right? I want you to go into a high back, right? Not just back. I want you to go in a high back. What do I mean by that? See how my leg is over his shoulder? That is what I want you to do. There's a reason. Can someone tell me why?
You know, whole right there from there.
Huh?
You have a lot more attack opportunities.
Assuming I rotate like this, what do I have to do now?
Still bring it to you.
I have to bring him back to me, right, and bring him on top. Right, I can get into body locks and all that kind of other stuff, right? One benefit of taking a high guard is I do not have to wait for him to move. I can move into this position all by my lonesome. Does that make sense? Right? I can keep him pinned. I can keep him controlled. Right? I can work. Boom. Does that make sense? I want you guys to work into this kind of position where I have one leg over the shoulder and one underneath his armpit. Does that make sense, what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Prefer you keep this arm of whatever control you choose. I don't care. If you don't keep the arm and it sleeps through, right, you're gonna have a harder time holding them. Not impossible, right? I do not recommend this.
Why make life difficult for yourself?
Way better. Okay? What's up?
Initially grabbing that arm, how do you manage to get it across the body when they're giving resistance?
Perfect. So, assuming I'm like this,
So you use your chest to press.
you see the first thing I did is I turned him onto the side a little. See how it exposed his elbow?
Just delete.
I need some kind of exposure to his elbow. Right? I can do this like this. Right? I can do it like this. Right? I do not care. But you need some form of exposure to the elbow and some amount of driving force to get it across to the center line. Right? How you do that, not my business. Right? But as a core concept, you literally just have to have one force drive and then another force be able to keep it there. Right? So, very simple version, turn them on the side, get kind of exposure, use my chest. Bring your hand to the other side, sir. My chest is my biggest pinning mechanism, right? If I use something like my hand, and we're like this, and he says, get his hand back, he has a lot more fight. Granted, he's still not going to win, right? But he has a lot more fight. I'm assuming he's way stronger than me. He's definitely getting out. He can literally just press his hand away, whoop, gone, right? No matter how hard he presses, he's never going to pick my chest. He's got to pick my whole weight up. How many grown men know how to pick your ass up with one hand?
Burn.
Very few, right? And those are phenoms, typically.
I can't do that.
Well, that's what we're asking them to do. But not only are we asking them to pick us up with one hand, we're asking them to pick them up like this.
Yeah.
In a position of non-strength.
That's a,
Good luck.
You change
Right.
right. It's real strong.
dude, I ain't know anybody can.
So like, if I'm here and I go, shwoomp, he's gonna have a hard time getting that hand back. And then he straightens it, comes back this way. I'm like, oh, why does it win? Because I'm not pinning it with my biggest pinning mechanism stuff. I'm now pinning it with something weak, small, right? So if I'm here, like so, right? If he tries to straighten it now, very hard, right? Assuming I don't have any kind of control, he straightens his hand, right? Comes up. Why does it win? Right? Because there's nothing pinning it, nothing keeping it across the body. Make sense?
It does.
Perfect. Go play. Anyway, so we've already established that we can get to this position. Alright, now, as far as finishes from this position, right? Assuming you have the hand, you have an armbar, right? You have a key lock,
Oh.
right?
Hmm.
You have Kimura, right?
Jeez, don't be.
You've obviously got wrist locks, right? Now, don't forget, you also have crushes, right? I can take and crush this. But
The
I'm
elbow joint?
pulling up. Okay, we're gonna explain the mechanics of this really fast. I'm squeezing, I'm pulling it up, and then I'm pressing. Pulling, pressing. Make sense? Now, I'm going to control, typically, the furthest fulcrum, right?
I like that.
Now, obviously we have that, right? We have the triangle, right? Assuming we don't want to leave, we have the other arm extension, aka type of crucifix positioning, right? There are tons of chokes. I literally just put my hand in, grab his own shoulder, start to press away, right? Why does all this work, right? Because I'm able to either choke, put pressure on both sides, and I have so much inside positioning on appendages, right, that I can do whatever I want, right? And assuming I like this position a lot, I can still utilize other things. Don't be afraid to do something of this nature, right? It's not comfortable, right? But even more so, it allows me to gain different kinds of attack position. Does that make sense? Cool, we're gonna play a game now. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start from side control. Alright? And for 2 minutes, your whole goal is to get to the back. No submission. The other person's goal is to basically re-guard or stand the fuck up. Make sense?
Jiu-jitsu isn't real, just stand up.
Sure. Alright? Now, does that make sense? Does everyone understand what I just said? Right? The goal is either get to the back, right? Or the person on bottom is to re-guard and stand up. What is a re-guard? Does everyone know what a guard is?
You're back in where they're between your legs, like a full guard or half guard?
This is guard. Make sense?
Was-
And I'm assuming the person that's trying to get to the back can go to other positions before going to the back?
Correct.
Like taking them out?
But you only win
If you get to the back.
if you get the back. And it restarts, right? For 2 minutes, he will stay on the bottom, right? And it restarts as soon as I either get to his back, right, or he gets guard or stands up. Make sense?
Perfect.
Cool. Let's do it.